and welcome to this week's episode of #Leadership What's on Your Mind, a podcast to get you to stop and think about your leadership journey by inviting amazing guests and experts in their field to really add value to your story and your journey stepping forwards. So today we are speaking to Aidan. How are we doing, Aidan? You okay?
Not too bad, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Aidan's from the Pro Football Academy and the PFA. And there's a link because I love the link between high performance and in sport into business. But my two eldest boys, play for the Pro Football Academy. The reason why we chose for them to go there is because giving them that nurture, support and exposure to great coaching and a great environment to thrive in their chosen sport. So Aidan, just for the people who don't know you, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the Pro Football Academy.
So as you say, Stuart, I'm Aidan Denver. I have been working at Pro Football Academy for over 4 years now. My current role is head of coach education. So to put it in a nutshell, really, and in simple terms, my role is to essentially coach the coaches and help them become firstly better people and better coaches, which has an knock-on effect straight to our players. So that's currently what I'm up to personally. And that's come from a number of roles that in the business and the organisation, and I've managed to work my way up. So it's nice and positive, and it's something that I really enjoy.
Amazing. So I always ask guests about their leadership journey. I know we're going to dig into some of the work you do with your coaches and some of the techniques, but I want to ask you personally about when did your leadership journey start? And tell us a little bit about your background in sport and some of your experiences.
So in regards to, I think it's probably easier to start with my background. My background's always been involved around sport and had a massive interest in sport. As a young lad, I played mainly football, and back home, one of the other sports is Gaelic football. I'm not sure if any of the audience are going to know what that is. It's an Irish sport, very similar to football, very similar to rugby in many ways. But yeah, that was probably the two main sports. I always had a massive interest in them, both on the pitch and both off the pitch. And I think my journey into taking things a little bit more seriously came as I got older, because I realised I was a good footballer. Sometimes, a lot of the time, I found myself being able to do a lot more things than other people. So that's where obviously I was a lot more invested in it. And then as obviously the years went on through my teenage years, obviously we all go through some difficult times, particularly throughout those years, and that was a case of just the real life sort of scenarios come across all the time of the society changes, culture changes as you get older, and there's a hell of a lot more distractions that come into play. People start going out as you get older and doing things that young people do, and I was pretty good at staying away from that. Managed to play at a decent level with football. Had a few trials here and there at clubs, and I quickly found that I was probably not the easiest player to work with, but I was very reactive, and that was very dependent on the leader that was in place, whether it be the coach or the manager, or it could have been somebody else involved in the team of the club. So that's where obviously as I've sort of grown up, I've experienced different leaders, different leadership styles, and I can now identify a hell of a lot years later what stimulates me, what type of leadership style stimulates me, and that's why I have a massive interest in it at the minute, just because I can relate to it a lot more. It's something that with sport and football in general, absolutely everybody has an opinion, which is great. Whether that opinion you agree with or you disagree with, that's a different conversation. However, whether that feedback or that opinion is negative or positive, whichever way you want to take it, it's always beneficial, and it's always good to take it on board, and adapt it, and work with it, or grow with it. So yeah, that's, as I say, that's a little bit about me. In regards to away from sport and football, I went to University of Manchester Metropolitan University, graduated in exercise and sports science, more so just to gain a different insight to sport and how processes and mechanisms work, in regards to the scientific side of the human body, which gave me, in my opinion, it gave me another string to my bow, if you like. I could relate to things more then. And most recently, I have done part of a master's in football business that's currently on hold. It was pretty difficult juggling a full-time master's and full-time work. So yeah, that's another string to my bow, if you like, just so that I can understand a different concept of the game. Yeah. So that the ultimate end goal for myself is to be able to relate to as many different parts and components of football as possible, whether that be at the very top, or where the corporate level works, or at the bottom with grassroots. So
yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much for sharing that. And again, you can already hear, you talked about on reflection and your awareness of leadership and the experience and exposure you've had at lots of different levels, which is amazing. And again, is why you're in the position you're in now, to share that and develop people. So I really wanted to get you on and speak to you guys because I see the impact in suggestive language in business, in coaching, in high performance, and getting the best out of people. And again, I know you're in the game of delivering that to the coaches, but then that's a trickle down effect for the coaches to then deal with the players. And I can see a great value in business owners having that suggestive language with their senior leadership teams, then to have a trickle down with the culture of the organization. So just tell us a little bit about how you embed that and how you communicate that across your coaches.
Well, it's a good question, and it's a quite in-depth question, more so in regards to the answer that you can give. I think the main thing for us guys, in this, with my role in particular, is we have to just make sure that whatever it is that we do, we're doing it to not only the best of our ability, but we have to understand why we're doing things before we go then and pass these messages on, or processes on, or whatever it may be, to the players. So we give the coach as much support as possible, whether that be support on a particular session, whether that be support or advice on dealing with a particular type of player or a particular type of parent. Whatever the scenario may be, what we have to ensure is that we make sure the processes are in place, making sure we first of all fully understand the processes before we then go and apply those processes in any scenario that may come up against us. In regards to how we communicate that, we're quite well structured. We have meetings with the appropriate members of staff throughout the week. These meetings then get filtered down from the head of coaching to the coaching department. Then it goes down to the area managers, and then the coaches, and then eventually it will get to the players. So in a way, what we try and do is we almost try and create a bit of a pitch within the meeting, so we see ourselves as players in those meetings. And obviously we're talking about things that are completely different from the actual game, in regards to playing it. But what we're doing is we're coming up with the processes, we're making sure they're being delivered, and ultimately when we then go and coach in the evenings, that player that comes to us, whatever age they are, whatever ability level they're at, we can accommodate them, and we have the tools to be able to relate to them, from their level to our level, and anything else that comes in between, and that includes the parent on the sideline as well. So all the processes that we have in place, they're ultimately for that player. We've got to make sure though that we're understanding the processes first. We can't go and deliver a session if we don't know the session, or we don't know why we're doing the session, because there are some very bright players out there who will ask you why, and the players who ask you why, they're the ones who will improve you. But it's not we don't do that in case that happens. We just do that so that, well, A, we're improving, and B, we're understanding of everything that we do, so that when we do go and relate the messages across to the parents and the players, or anybody else involved, then it comes across with a lot more clarity. And we can tell, when we have conversations with people, we can tell if people are really into it. We can tell if people, they don't really know what you're talking about, but they like it anyway. As long as we know what we're talking about, then our job's done, and all we've got to do is then go and communicate that.
Yeah, amazing. I love the way you've put that in that story, in that structure. I love that. Regards to getting the best out of people, whether that be the coaches or the players, I know we've spoken before about the power of questioning, and just tell us a little bit about how you use that in your world.
So one of the main interventions that we use with our players and our coaches is just simple Q&A. It doesn't have to be War and Peace. The Q&A is completely relatable to the individual. Each individual is their own person. They develop at their own pace. They take information on board completely different. When we do our Q&A, the whole reason behind doing it is to make sure that the player is understanding what we're doing, but we don't give the answer away. So if a player asks, or if we're asking a player a certain type of pass, for example, we just layer the questioning. So we might say, why have you chose that type of pass? What could you do differently next time? What would you do differently if there was a defender in this place? And what it constantly is doing is, the deeper the question, the deeper understanding. So as we ask questions, they're having to think more and think more and think more. And yes, we might have to guide certain players to an answer, whether that answer be something that we agree with or disagree with. The ultimate aim of that intervention and that exercise, whether it be with coach or with player, is just so that they're thinking for themselves and we're not providing everything for them. We want to create people who can think independently. We want to create people who, given a problem comes in front of them, they not necessarily have the ability to go and solve that problem, but they might have the tools and that intervention to go, right, what would I do if this was here, that was there, I've got a different option. And it's just really using that as more of an exercise to, again, gain that deeper thinking as we ask questions. So we ask questions, deeper thinking, never giving the answer away. Because at the end of the day, in football, there is no right or wrong. There are scenarios where a particular decision might be better than a different decision, but it's a sport that's got so many variables in it at one time that we just have to paint as many different pictures as possible, ask as many questions as we can, and make sure that player or that coach is going deeper and deeper and deeper, and really going into places that they've never had to go before. And ultimately, it's a non-comfort zone. We want to push our coaches, our players outside the comfort zone. We want them to feel that stress in a good way, and being able to harness it, being able to deal with it, and eventually come up with a solution. So that's why we use the Q&A.
Amazing. I love that's, and as you were saying that you're using the sports and the football and the coaching, but I already know that the way you said that is so important for business owners to think on that same, the impact and the results you can have are amazing, to have those techniques within your organization. You mentioned parents, and I know we've spoken about this. I see parents almost like a business owner, because you hear this all the time. It's easier just to tell them the right answer, easier just to tell them what to do. And just share some of your kind of, we want to be turning into and adding that nurture, support. And I know people who are either parents, the PFA, or business owners who are supporting their children in high performance sport across the board. In your experience, what sort of words of sort of advice, guidance can you give people to help that nurture sequence to support high performance in their kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing that jumped out to me was your very last word, kids. They're kids. You know, at the end of the day, we they've been on, depending on obviously the age, you know, they've been on the earth a hell of a lot less than what we have. Their ability to process information, their ability to process emotions is completely different. So how we as adults process information and emotions, I think if we boil down to, you know, the real, the black and white, the stuff that's right in front of us, is a lot of the time parents, and not all parents, they can react to their player in particular, because, you know, obviously if you're going to watch football, you're going to watch your son or your daughter play. You know, you're not really too interested in how their friends doing in this group or beside them. And we always say that at the end of the day, if a kid makes a mistake, then they make a mistake. It's fine. You know, I like to use a good example with my players within the session, that when you first started riding a bike, did you fall off? Yes. Did you throw the bike away, or did you keep trying? Well, we kept trying. And it's the same thing, that we can, them little scenarios that can paint the pictures in their head, not just the kids, but the parents, and to not hammer them, and to not crush them if they make a mistake, because mistake is just a learning process in its raw form. We encourage mistakes. We create an environment for them to take risks, and we want them to. We let them make a mistake. We provide them with feedback. They provide themselves with feedback, and we make that aware to the parents as well. You know, don't let all the good work being done in that hour and a half session be ruined by a 2 or 3 minute conversation in the car home because he misplaced a pass or he didn't do something that you think is right. They're young players. They're going to make a hell of a lot more mistakes than do stuff that's right or might seem to be right. So it's that education of the parents where, you know, be on board with us. Here's some questions that you might ask on the way home. What could you have done better today? What did you do really well? And straight away, it's kind of like the Q&A that we talked about. You've got the player now thinking, reflecting, thinking about areas for development, thinking about strengths, how they might build on the strengths, how they might improve the areas of development. And it's a coach away from the pitch. That's the way I see it. Can mum, dad, auntie, uncle, granddad, can they be a coach away from the pitch? You don't have to go and put a session on in the garden. You might just ask questions. You might just let them be themselves. Let them, you know, discover their own path. Let them develop. Because whether that parent likes it or not, what will happen is that child isn't going to develop any quicker or get any better. It's not going to work like that. They're just going to, if anything, it could hinder them. So just let them be kids. Let them make mistakes, and don't crush them. Don't hammer them when they do something wrong, because I promise you they don't mean it. I promise you.
Yeah, I love that. And again, in that kind of world of having new members of staff, it just shouted out when you said that fact of they've been here a lot less than we have. Like,
Yeah,
I talk about the connection sometimes between operational and strategic in your business, that
yeah,
sometimes, through no fault of our own, we forget where we were at on our
yeah,
first day at work, or
yeah,
our
of course.
first time we went on a course and learned
Yeah.
something new. And we don't do it on purpose, but the
Mm.
people that are striving for high performance are the ones that have got that awareness.
Yeah. And I think we forget that. We forget how we felt when we were 10 years old. We forget how we felt when we were 15. You know, I take my under 15s at the minute, and look, some of them are a nightmare because they're 14, 15 years old. They've been in school all week. I've got to remember that they're coming from that environment. You know, I've got 18 lads in the squad, 18 different personalities, 18 different days, 18 different households, you know, maybe 30 or 40 different parents, and that's what you have to deal with. So, you know, it all boils down to, when you do come, how can we be of a positive effect, and how can we benefit them, and just to ultimately let them have fun, but educate them, help them become better people. And what better way to do that for me in our industry than through football, and that's, you know, that for me is a blessing, and I'm thankful for that. But yeah, I think above all, just let kids be kids, let the learning process happen, and you know, hopefully they do get some good coaching along the way, wherever that may be and whatever industry that is in.
Amazing. So we've only got like 1 minute left.
Yeah.
I just want to know, just quickly, one or two things that you see people doing, as in children that are in the development stages, so they're going into their teens,
Yep.
that are doing very well. What sets them apart?
Coachability, behavior, and their willingness to just want to be there and want to learn. If an individual is coachable, great. If they're willing to listen and learn, great. And a big thing for us is behavior. You know, you ain't going to get any of them if you're too busy messing and not listening. It could be a case of that. But yeah, I think being able to be coachable, being able to take feedback on, and you know, just applying yourself in the correct way to achieve those two things above.
Amazing. Awesome. That was the buzzer. I don't know, you heard 20 minutes goes so quickly. I say this every time. So Aidan, thank you so much for your time. Guys, if you enjoyed that and you're listening to us on your podcast provider, make sure you follow us. Make sure you share your takeaways from this episode across your social media platforms, as well as following myself. And also I've put the pre-FA links below here as well. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, make sure you hit subscribe, and you'll see the episodes loaded in, and make sure you hit the reminder buttons so you get them every Wednesday at 6 a.m. So Aidan, thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you.
And I will see everybody else that's watching on next week's episode, and look forward to seeing you then. Take care. Bye.